Triple H looked Booker T dead in the eyes and said, "People like him don't deserve to be world champion." That line still echoes through wrestling history today. It was racist, it was disgusting, and it happened at the biggest event of the year. But here's the thing, Triple H might not even be the worst name on this list. Some of these wrestlers didn't just hurt Booker's feelings, they endangered his career, they disrespected the business, they broke the code that every veteran holds sacred. And Booker T remembers every single one of them. This isn't about losing matches or getting buried. This is about wrestlers who cross lines that can't be uncrossed. Some of them apologized, some of them didn't. But all of them left a mark on one of the greatest wrestlers to ever step in a ring. Booker T is a two-time WWE Hall of Famer. He held 35 championships across every major company. He survived prison. He survived the death of WCW. He built his own wrestling school from nothing. When a man like that says he won't forgive someone, you better believe there's a reason. The internet loves to create lists. Top 10 this, top 5 that, and wrestling media is no different. A few years ago, someone put together a list of wrestlers Booker T supposedly hates forever. The list went viral, fans argued about it, critics debated it, and eventually Booker himself addressed it on his podcast. He didn't deny the conflicts. He didn't pretend everything was fine, but he also didn't confirm that magic number 10. The real story is more complicated than any clickbait headline. Some of these feuds ended years ago, some of them never really started, and some of them still burn to this day. Let's start with the most famous one, the one that fans still argue about 20 years later. WrestleMania 19, Booker T versus Triple H for the World Heavyweight Championship. On paper, it should have been Booker's crowning moment. He was the most decorated wrestler in WCW history. He'd proven himself in WWE. He was over with the crowd. He deserved that title. But WWE had other plans. And those plans included one of the most racially charged storylines in modern wrestling history. Triple H cut promos that went way beyond normal trash talk. He brought up Booker's past. He mentioned his criminal record. He referenced his struggles before wrestling. And then came that line, "People like you." Those 3 words carried weight that everyone understood. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't coded. It was a direct attack that used Booker's real life against him. Fans were horrified. Critics called it out immediately, but the storyline continued. And at WrestleMania, after weeks of building sympathy for Booker, Triple H won. Not with a quick pin either. He hit his finisher. Then he waited. 23 seconds passed before he covered Booker. 23 seconds that felt like an eternity, and then Booker lost. The reaction was immediate. Fans felt robbed. Wrestling journalists called it one of the worst booking decisions in WWE history. The racial implications were impossible to ignore. Here was a black wrestler being told he wasn't good enough, losing at the biggest show of the year, proving the villain right. It looked terrible. It felt worse. And people assumed Booker T must hate Triple H forever because of it. But reality is messier than that. Years later, Booker revealed something surprising. He approved every part of that angle, every promo, every insult, even the finish. Why would he do that? Because Booker T understood the wrestling business better than most. He knew that refusing the storyline would have been career suicide. WCW wrestlers weren't exactly welcome in WWE's locker room. The company was dominated by guys who'd been there for years. The Clique ran everything backstage. Triple H was married to the boss's daughter. Booker was the outsider trying to prove he belonged. Saying no to that storyline would have meant getting buried completely. At least by saying yes, he stayed in the main event picture. He took the loss. He swallowed his pride, and he kept working. Was it the right call? That's debatable. But it wasn't about hate. It was about survival. And today, Booker T works as a commentator on NXT. Triple H runs creative for WWE. They have a professional relationship. They respect each other's work. The heat from WrestleMania 19 was creative. It was systemic. It was about a bad booking decision made by people above both of them. Triple H didn't write those promos alone. Booker didn't lose because Triple H hated him personally. It was business. Ugly business, but business nonetheless. The decision to approve that angle haunted Booker for years. Fans would bring it up constantly. They'd ask why he let it happen, why he didn't fight back, why he didn't demand a better ending. But Booker knew something fans didn't. He knew that WWE was testing him. They were seeing if he'd be a team player, if he'd do what was asked, if he'd put the company first. And in that moment, he chose his career over his pride. It's a choice many wrestlers have made. Not all of them admit it, but Booker's been honest about it. He wanted to stay on top. He wanted to keep working main events. And that meant taking the loss at WrestleMania. The interesting thing is how the storyline affected Triple H too. Years later, even he seemed to acknowledge it went too far. The promos were uncomfortable. The finish was questionable. And the whole angle left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. But at the time, everyone involved thought they were telling a compelling story. They thought the controversy would draw money. And in some ways it did. People talked about it. People remembered it. But not in the way WWE wanted. It became a cautionary tale about how not to book racially charged angles. And both Booker and Triple H became symbols of that failure. So if Triple H isn't on the unforgiven list, who is? Let's talk about Scott Steiner, Big Papa Pump, the man with the largest arms in wrestling history, the same guy who traded the WCW championship back and forth with Booker T during the company's dying days. Their rivalry was intense, it was violent, and it was personal. Steiner had a reputation. He was legitimately tough. He'd been an amateur wrestling champion in college, but he was also unstable. His behavior backstage was erratic, his promos were unpredictable, and his relationship with other wrestlers was complicated at best. Booker and Steiner feuded throughout late 2000 and early 2001. They main evented pay-per-views. They traded the world title. Their matches were physical, really physical. At Mayhem 2000, Steiner beat Booker in a straitjacket cage match. He choked Booker unconscious with the Steiner recliner. The referee called the match. Steiner was champion. But the rivalry didn't end there. They kept fighting through the final months of WCW. The locker room was chaos. The company was bleeding money. Everyone knew the end was coming. And in that environment, personal tensions ran high. Steiner wasn't easy to work with. He had issues with management. He had issues with other wrestlers. He had issues, period. But Booker kept showing up, kept doing his job, and on the final episode of Monday Nitro, he got his revenge. He beat Steiner for the WCW championship one last time. It was poetic. The most decorated WCW wrestler ending the company's run on top. But that wasn't the end of the story. When WWE bought WCW in March 2001, everything changed. Suddenly, everyone was unemployed. The contracts were worthless. Wrestlers had to wait and hope WWE would hire them. Steiner was terrified. This legitimate tough guy who'd main evented pay-per-views was suddenly vulnerable. Booker T remembers Steiner coming up to him that final night. His voice was different. The bravado was gone. He asked Booker what he thought WWE would do. Would they get hired? Would they have jobs? It was a moment of pure human fear, and it changed how Booker saw him. Steiner wasn't just the crazy guy who'd made his life hell. He was another wrestler facing an uncertain future. They were in the same boat, and that shared trauma did something interesting. It killed the heat. Years later, the two would joke about their rivalry. They'd reference the old matches. They'd laugh about the chaos. They even settled their differences in a humorous game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo during an interview. The hatred wasn't permanent. It was competitive. It was circumstantial. And once the circumstances changed, so did the relationship. Scott Steiner isn't on the unforgiven list. He's a reminder that professional heat doesn't always translate to personal hate. The WCW days were wild for everyone involved. The company was dying. Nobody knew who'd have jobs. And wrestlers were fighting for position every single day. In that environment, rivalries got more intense than they needed to be. Steiner and Booker pushed each other hard, maybe too hard. But when the music stopped and WCW closed its doors, all that intensity seemed pointless. They were just two guys who'd worked together for years. Two guys who'd helped keep a sinking ship afloat as long as possible. And two guys who'd always have that shared history. But not every conflict ends with reconciliation. Some fights leave permanent scars. And in 2006, Booker T got into one of the most infamous backstage brawls in WWE history. His opponent wasn't a veteran. It wasn't an old rival. It was Batista, the Animal, WWE's golden boy. The guy being pushed to the moon. And according to reports, Batista didn't show the proper respect. In wrestling, there's a hierarchy. Veterans come first, rookies know their place, and mid-carders don't talk back to established stars. Batista apparently didn't get that memo. The details vary depending on who's telling the story. Some say it started over a comment, others say it was about locker room etiquette, but everyone agrees on what happened next. Booker and Batista got physical. It wasn't a work. It wasn't for the cameras. It was a real fight between two grown men who couldn't settle their differences with words. Backstage brawls aren't uncommon in wrestling. The business attracts alpha personalities. Egos clash. Tempers flare, but this one was notable because of who was involved. Booker was a respected veteran. Batista was WWE's next big thing, and they were throwing hands in front of everyone. The fight ended. Cooler heads prevailed, and both men went back to work. But here's the thing about physical confrontations in wrestling culture. They often settle the score. Once you fought, the tension is gone. You proved your point. You defended your position, and now everyone can move on. That's exactly what happened with Booker and Batista. The heat dissipated. They developed a professional respect. They worked together afterward without major issues. The fight was intense, but it wasn't unforgivable. It was two guys enforcing the code in the only way that made sense to them. Looking back, the Batista fight was almost necessary. The locker room needed to know where Booker stood. He wasn't going to tolerate disrespect. He wasn't going to let younger guys walk all over him. And he certainly wasn't going to let WWE's Golden Boy treat him like he didn't matter. By standing up physically, Booker earned respect, not just from Batista, but from everyone watching. It sent a message. And in wrestling, messages like that are important. The hierarchy exists for a reason. Veterans earned their spot, and newcomers need to recognize that. So Batista's not on the list either. Neither is Triple H. Neither is Steiner. Starting to notice a pattern? The biggest names, the most famous feuds, the conflicts that made headlines, most of them got resolved. Time heals wounds. Shared experiences build understanding. And professional wrestlers are surprisingly good at moving past their problems. But there are exceptions. There are some conflicts that don't fade, some wrestlers who violated codes that can't be ignored, and Buff Bagwell is one of them. July 2001, Raw. The WWE was trying to integrate WCW talent into their programming. The Invasion storyline was supposed to be huge. WCW versus WWE, the ultimate dream matches. And one of the first big tests was Booker T versus Buff Bagwell. On paper, it made sense. Two WCW stars getting a chance to prove themselves. But in practice, it was a disaster. The match was terrible. The crowd didn't care. Bagwell looked out of shape. His conditioning was bad. His work was sloppy. And worst of all, he didn't seem to care. For Booker T, this was unforgivable. Here's why. Booker had spent years in WCW. He'd survived the Monday Night Wars. He'd main evented shows when the company was dying. He'd held the world title when everyone else had given up. He represented WCW with pride. And this was his chance to show WWE what WCW talent could do. This was the opportunity to prove they belonged. Bagwell ruined it. His terrible performance made everyone look bad. It made WCW look like a joke. It made Booker look like he couldn't carry a match. And it damaged the entire Invasion storyline before it really started. Wrestling is about protecting the business. You work hard, you stay in shape, you give the fans their money's worth. Even when you're losing, you make your opponent look good. That's the code. That's the standard every professional wrestler is supposed to meet. Bagwell didn't meet it. He showed up unprepared. He embarrassed himself, and he embarrassed everyone associated with him. For a veteran like Booker T, who took the business seriously, who'd overcome real obstacles to get where he was, this kind of laziness was intolerable. It wasn't a creative disagreement. It wasn't a personality clash. It was a fundamental failure to respect the profession. The Bagwell match had consequences beyond just one bad night. WWE officials were watching. They were evaluating whether WCW talent was worth investing in. And when they saw that disaster, it confirmed their worst fears. WCW guys weren't ready for WWE. They weren't good enough. They needed to be buried. And that's exactly what happened. The Invasion angle never reached its potential. WCW wrestlers were treated like second-class citizens, and guys like Booker had to work twice as hard to overcome the stigma, all because Buff Bagwell couldn't be bothered to show up in shape. Bagwell's WWE career ended shortly after. He was released, he went back to the independents, but the damage was done. Booker would go on to have a successful WWE run. He'd win championships. He'd main event WrestleMania. But that Bagwell match always stuck with him. It represented everything wrong with certain wrestlers: the lack of discipline, the lack of respect, the willingness to waste opportunities that others would kill for. If there's a list of truly unforgivable wrestlers in Booker's mind, Buff Bagwell is absolutely on it, and he's not alone. Let's go back further. Back to Booker's early days, before WCW became a national company, before he was a world champion, back when he was grinding through Texas territories and regional shows. That's where he encountered Ahmed Johnson. And that's where another deep grudge was born. Ahmed Johnson had a reputation. He was big, he was strong, he looked impressive, but he was also dangerous. Not in a good way. In wrestling, being stiff means hitting too hard. It means working recklessly. It means putting your opponent at risk. Ahmed was notoriously stiff. Wrestlers talk, word gets around, and in the territories, everyone knew who the unsafe workers were. You avoided them if you could. You protected yourself if you couldn't. Booker and Ahmed had a bitter rivalry in Texas. Then they both ended up in WCW, and the problems continued. For Booker, this wasn't just about bad matches. This was about safety. Wrestlers trust each other with their bodies, with their careers, with their health. An unsafe worker breaks that trust. They put your livelihood at risk. They could end your career with one careless move. That's not something you forgive easily. The Texas wrestling scene in the early 90s was brutal. Wrestlers worked multiple shows a week for very little money. The conditions were rough, the crowds were small, and the competition was fierce. Everyone was trying to stand out. Everyone wanted to get noticed by the big companies. And in that environment, some wrestlers took shortcuts. They worked stiff to seem more legitimate. They injured people to look tough. Ahmed Johnson was one of those guys, and Booker T never forgot it. Ahmed's career eventually faded. He bounced around different companies. He never reached the heights many predicted. But for Booker, the damage was done. You don't forget the guy who made you fear for your safety every time you stepped in the ring. You don't forgive someone who treated your body like it didn't matter. The grudge with Ahmed Johnson runs deep. It goes back to fundamental professional values, and it represents the kind of heat that never really goes away. Unlike Triple H or Steiner, there's no shared experience that heals this wound. There's no corporate change that makes it irrelevant. It's just a veteran remembering when someone endangered his career and thinking, I'll never forget that. Not every conflict is about physical danger, though. Sometimes it's about creative control, sometimes it's about politics, and sometimes it's about working for someone you fundamentally disagree with. That brings us to Jeff Jarrett. Double J, the founder of TNA Wrestling. Booker spent time in TNA. He held championships there. He worked with talented wrestlers, but he also butted heads with Jarrett constantly. Jarrett was management. He controlled creative. He made the final decisions. And Booker didn't always agree with those decisions. TNA was trying to compete with WWE. It was an uphill battle. They had limited resources, limited television exposure, limited star power. Every decision mattered. And when Jarrett made calls that Booker thought were wrong, tensions rose. Was it personal? Not really. Was it frustrating? Absolutely. But this kind of heat is common in wrestling. Creative disagreements happen everywhere. Wrestlers and bookers argue. Talent and management clash. It's part of the business. And usually once people move on to different companies, the heat fades. Booker left TNA. Jarrett eventually left too. They went separate ways. The grudge was professional, not personal. It's not the kind of thing that makes an unforgiven list. The TNA years were complicated for Booker. He was past his WWE prime. He wasn't the main event guy anymore, but he still had value. He still had name recognition, and TNA needed veterans to legitimize their product. Jarrett needed Booker more than Booker needed Jarrett, but that didn't mean their relationship was smooth. They argued about booking, they disagreed on storylines, and they both had strong opinions about where the company should go. In the end, neither of them got what they wanted. TNA never became the WWE competitor it aspired to be, and Booker moved on to other opportunities. But there's one more name worth discussing, a modern name, someone from the current generation who represents a different kind of conflict. Swerve Strickland, rising star in AEW, talented in-ring performer, and someone who got into a very public war of words with Booker T. This wasn't about old grudges. This wasn't about backstage fights. This was about philosophy, about how modern wrestlers approach the business. And Booker T had strong opinions about it. Booker is old school. He came up in an era where kayfabe mattered, where wrestlers stayed in character, where you protected the illusion at all costs. The modern generation does things differently. They post on social media. They film TikToks. They break character constantly. And for veterans like Booker, this is sacrilege. He's aligned himself with other legends who feel the same way. The Undertaker has criticized modern wrestlers for prioritizing viral content over in-ring storytelling. Booker agrees completely. When he sees wrestlers filming dance videos backstage, he sees disrespect. He sees people who don't understand the business. He sees talent being wasted on content that doesn't draw money. Swerve Strickland represents the new generation. He's active on social media. He engages with fans online. He's part of the digital wrestling culture. And when Booker criticized that approach, Swerve pushed back. The argument went public. Both men made their points. And it became a proxy war for a larger debate happening throughout wrestling. Is the old way better? Should wrestlers maintain character constantly? Or is adapting to modern media part of evolution? There's no clear answer. But the conflict between Booker and Swerve became symbolic of this generational divide. Here's the important part though. This isn't personal hate. Booker doesn't think Swerve is a bad person. He thinks Swerve represents a trend that's damaging to the business. That's an ideological disagreement. It's a professional concern. It's not the same as Buff Bagwell disrespecting the industry by showing up out of shape. It's not the same as Ahmed Johnson endangering people in the ring. It's a debate about the future of wrestling, and debates like that don't usually create permanent grudges. They create discussion, they create content, and eventually they fade as both sides move on to other topics. The generational conflict in wrestling is real. Older veterans grew up in a different era. They protected the business differently. They understood wrestling as something sacred, something that required complete dedication. The new generation sees it as entertainment, as content, as something that can be manipulated for social media engagement. Neither side is completely right. Neither side is completely wrong, but the tension exists, and Booker T has positioned himself firmly on the veteran side of that divide. So where does that leave us? We started with the promise of 10 wrestlers Booker T will never forgive, but the reality is more nuanced. Triple H, they work together now. Scott Steiner, they've reconciled. Batista, the fight settled things. Jeff Jarrett, Barrett, professional disagreement, nothing personal. Swerve Strickland, generational debate, not deep hatred. That's 5 names that don't really qualify as unforgivable. So who does? Buff Bagwell stands out. His unprofessionalism damaged a major storyline. He embarrassed Booker. He disrespected the business. That's the kind of violation that sticks. Ahmed Johnson is another clear candidate. His unsafe work endangered careers. He created an environment of fear and resentment. That's not something veterans forget. Those 2 names represent genuine, lasting grudges. Not because of egos, not because of politics, but because they violated fundamental codes that every professional wrestler is supposed to follow. The truth is, the magic number 10 was never real. It came from online lists, from media compilations, from fan speculation. Booker T addressed these lists on his podcast. He confirmed some conflicts. He added context to others. But he never said, here are exactly 10 people I hate forever. The sensational headline was designed to get clicks. It worked, but it didn't reflect reality. What's real is that Booker T had a long, complicated career. He worked with hundreds of wrestlers. Some became friends, some became enemies. Most ended up somewhere in between. The conflicts that really matter are the ones that touch on Booker's core values. He's a man who went to prison, who lost his brother, who built himself from nothing, who became one of the greatest wrestlers in history through sheer determination. When he sees someone wasting opportunities, it offends him. When he sees someone endangering careers, it angers him. When he sees someone disrespecting the business he loves, he remembers. Those are the grudges that last, not the creative disagreements, not the backstage arguments, not the competitive rivalries. The real grudges are reserved for those who failed to meet the most basic standards of professionalism. Today, Booker T runs Reality of Wrestling. He trains the next generation. He teaches them how to work, how to carry themselves, how to respect the business. And he uses his own experiences as lessons. When he talks about Buff Bagwell, he's teaching about preparation. When he mentions Ahmed Johnson, he's emphasizing safety. When he discusses any of these conflicts, he's passing down wisdom earned through decades of experience. His openness about past feuds isn't about holding grudges. It's about education. Wrestling is unique. It's performance art. It's athletic competition. It's theater. It's business. And it's built on trust. Trust that your opponent will protect you. Trust that your colleagues will work hard. Trust that everyone involved respects the craft. When that trust breaks, relationships break. Some can be repaired, some can't. Booker T's career is a masterclass in navigating these complex relationships. He's forgiven people who others would hold grudges against. And he's maintained distance from people who violated his code. The media loves simple narratives. 10 wrestlers he hates, 5 people he'll never forgive, rankings and lists and definitive statements. But real life is messier. Real relationships are complicated, and real grudges are usually based on something deeper than losing a match or getting a bad promo. They're based on values, on standards, on the fundamental rules that make the business work. Booker T has high standards. He expects professionalism, he demands respect. And when people fail to meet those expectations, he remembers. Does he think about Buff Bagwell every day? Probably not. Does he lose sleep over Ahmed Johnson? Unlikely. But when someone asks him about these wrestlers, he doesn't pretend everything was fine. He doesn't sugarcoat the conflicts. He tells the truth. He explains what went wrong. He makes it clear that some behaviors are unacceptable. And in doing so, he reinforces the values that made him successful. Hard work, dedication, safety, respect. These aren't just words. They're the foundation of a successful wrestling career. The viral list of 10 unforgivable wrestlers was never accurate, but it pointed to something real. Booker T's career included genuine conflicts with wrestlers who failed to meet his standards. Some of those conflicts were resolved, others weren't. The ones that remain unresolved typically involve serious violations of professional conduct, not personality clashes, not creative disagreements, but fundamental failures to uphold the integrity of the business. Those are the grudges that last. Those are the conflicts that define what Booker T stands for. In the end, Booker T isn't holding on to hate. He's holding on to standards. He's not dwelling on the past. He's using the past to inform the present. Every story about a difficult wrestler is a lesson for his students. Every discussion of backstage conflicts is a warning about what not to do. And every time he addresses these so-called unforgiven wrestlers, he's really addressing the values that matter in professional wrestling. Work hard, stay safe, respect the business. And if you can't do those things, don't expect forgiveness from the veterans who built this industry. The number 10 doesn't matter. The specific names only matter in context. What matters is understanding why these conflicts happen and what they reveal about professional wrestling culture. Booker T represents a dying breed, the veteran who paid his dues, who survived impossible odds, who built a legacy through talent and determination. When he criticizes someone, it's not petty, it's principled. When he refuses to forgive, it's not stubbornness, it's standards. And in an industry that's that's constantly changing, those standards are worth preserving. So the next time you see a headline about wrestlers Booker T hates, remember this. The real story isn't about hate, it's about respect. It's about professionalism. It's about protecting the business for future generations. Booker T isn't out for revenge. He's out for excellence. And anyone who falls short of that standard better believe he'll remember. Not because he's petty, but because in wrestling, maintaining standards is how you honor the art form. And Booker T has spent his entire career honoring wrestling in every way possible.